was here when I was first elected, and frankly has been like a rock ever since. And it's interesting, I think, to think back to the 1980s and what a different place the council was. A council of 39 members at that time, which is why we have colleagues that sat up front, because we can't get us all in there. We had a committee system that some would like to see us return to, but was slow and cumbersome, and people like Andy could make things that he didn't want to happen not happen for months and at times in years. Thurrock was also very different. It was a time when there was no Chapel 100, there was no Lakeside, there was no QE2 bridge. I think it was just the 1 year after the M25 itself opened. So a really very, very different place. And I know that Andy in those early days was proud of the role that he played, even as a backbencher, in helping to bring forward developments such as Chapel 100 and such as Lakeside. When I joined the council, Andy was chairing the housing committee, which he was proud to do, and did in the way that he did everything, with real commitment, taking his role very, very seriously. He was proud when he was elected to lead the council, and I was proud to be elected as the deputy leader of the council, as Andy's deputy on the same day. And that was a time that the council changed and made real progress. We did become a unitary authority, as everybody knows and everybody remembers. What people don't always remember is that it was Andy's drive and determination at that time that brought forward community forums that we still have and that we're still all committed to and very proud of. One of the things I will remember about Andy was the Shepherd Campus School, now the Harris Academy, which was built before we became a unitary authority, and it was Andy's kind of vision and tenacity that saw that the community of Chapel 100 needed a school. And that school was built, believe it or not, in the teeth of opposition from local residents who thought it was the wrong site. And I remember Andy standing up in the chamber when the gallery was full of people being critical and saying very calmly, "You criticise me now, but I guarantee you will be fighting to get your kids into that school in the fullness of time." And you know how right he was. And that is the way that I will always remember Andy, as somebody who was totally phlegmatic. He didn't bear grudges against anyone. To see him on the doorsteps, to see him out canvassing, he was one of those people who could knock on the door, get a volley of abuse, have people swearing at him, and just say, "That's fine, mate, okay," brush himself down and knock on the next door. You know, most people, whatever party, you take a couple of minutes, you kind of readjust. Andy never ever needed to do that, and he was a fantastic campaigner. He was also a really flashy person, somebody who never drove a car, somebody who would take a bus or who would walk, and he did frequently end up carrying out impromptu advice surgeries on the bus. Andy is somebody that I am going to miss very, very much. He helped me a great deal when I was newly elected, but he's always helped younger people, not only members of this group, but he's always there to support young members, whichever party they stood for. And I think it is a phrase that is sometimes overused, but I think in the case of Andy Smith, we are unlikely to see his type again. Mr. Mayor, I think we're all going to miss him very much indeed.
From polling day, he's in for a very rude shock from Andy indeed. I don't think he'd forgive me if I didn't mention that he leaves us with his election record unblemished at 100%, since it's something that he was so fond of reminding me on a week-in, week-out basis. I'll never forget when we went for a curry in our restaurant, in our walk during election time. Everything was going well, good food and drink, but suddenly Andy asked to see the manager. I thought, oh goodness, what's wrong here? Andy solemnly stared over his glasses as the manager approached, and then promptly stated that he was having a very good time, but needed to know very quickly if all the chefs were registered to vote. and that was Andy all over. He could go in somewhere as a complete stranger, and by the end of the conversation, they were offering to put his leaflets into all of the takeaway bags that they delivered. I think what made Andy so successful was that he always remembered what it was that he had come into politics to do, and that was to help people. He once told me something that really stuck with me, that there are those who, on being elected as a councillor, suddenly thought that they were important, but they aren't. They're simply now in a better position to help people than they were before. Andy would always try his best to help people and built a reputation as someone that would always have a go at solving problems that his constituents brought to him, and more often than not he succeeded. Into his 60s, Andy could so easily have taken a step back from everything that he did. He could easily have been a mayor of the borough, but he didn't want to be. He wanted to be in the cabinet where he could make his biggest contribution. And I think all of those that worked with him saw how passionate he was about Thurrock. He was never happy with the status quo and always wanted to make sure that he was improving the borough. I will miss particularly his wit and humour. He was never slow just to shout agreed during a debate when he thought people were pointlessly waffling and he wanted to go and watch the football. But he was never partisan for its own sake or rude or aggressive in debate. He'd always rather look for a joke than an insult. I've spoken to those from across the political divide who recognised Andy as someone who would always ensure that a sincere request, and in particular requests about tackling issues in members' wards, was met with genuine effort on his part to help out. So, Mr. Mayor, I think we can all learn a lot from Andy. He was a man who was very proud of his family, and he'd often talk about his children in particular. He was a one-of-a-kind campaigner, a knowledgeable leader, a passionate advocate for Thurrock, a hard-working local councillor, but above all, a really great friend who I will miss enormously.